Hey everybody, welcome to day 43. I just made a really nice, long, awesome video that apparently was, too nice, long, and awesome for YouTube or Facebook to be able to upload. So I'm going to be pretty quick with this one, even though I just wasted 20 seconds talking about this. So, let's jump right into it. Landmark Forum, day 3, the first 2 days. If you watched my previous video, you kind of know where I was at with that. In a place of personal perturbation of like, why the fuck can't I get something out of this obviously like awesome program that's been around for 30 years? I've been talking to the trainers, had an interesting conversation with one of the trainers as, in front of everybody. And so later that night, following that conversation, I went home and I wrote a letter that I really wanted to clear up the communication between us and co-create a space of communication and of me being open to coaching of like, hey, I feel like I'm missing this huge opportunity to be pulling stuff out. What am I not doing? What else can I do here? Because I feel like I'm grasping for straws, calling people as much as I possibly can and, getting out of it. And it's not me not being like attentive, like I'm in first, second row, like leaned up, forward, watching, not crossing arms, even if it's cold, like whatever the case is, like I'm just doing everything that I can to be present, authentic, in the moment and there. So on the third day, we ended up having, there was a lot of conversations and stuff like that going on. A few pieces of content that really came in and I was like, oh, you know what? That's really, really helpful. I think this can be really useful. One of the things I will have to say overall about the Landmark was that you get some amazing, lack of better words, scripts. But basically like general guidelines or like motivations to open up conversations that you might not necessarily want to be opening up with people who you maybe don't even want to really be talking to, quite honestly. But if you don't have those types of conversations, if you don't have those types of people who you really don't want to be talking to, it's a little bit different of an experience. So after going home on the second night, I took off the student hat and I put on the trainer facilitator hat. And I had to take a look at this. It's like, okay, I've been in situations like this where I'm being personally challenged, but it's not being spoken. And that was the new frame of mind that I had to be taking a look at this, kind of like a meta view of the room. And as if I was a trainer facilitator learning to go through this program, what would it be like? Well, first and foremost, I don't care how, detailed that script needs to be. I'm not going to be reading every line of it. That really, really, really bugged me. And that was just, if you saw one of my previous videos or anything, 94 times within 15 minutes, looking up and down, going through almost every single line, holding my hand exactly where I am, that kind of stuff. So that was really not impressive. But what was impressive actually was that he was a pretty damn good facilitator when he was off script. So that's why I was like, dude, like create a theme around what you want to talk about and start building in those ideas into what you're talking about. So, anyway, on to day 3. So day 3 starts going through and it comes up with, I end up having a conversation with the 3.5. Okay. I ended up having a conversation with the trainer talking about, basically, I read him my letter of saying, hey, I want to invent a space of creating a possibility between you and I where we can co-create this space of communication because I want to get the most out of this that I can. Excuse me. And that was when the trainer jacket kind of came off, and it was much more of a thing of two people he and I talking rather than a trainer, or rather than a student facilitator type role, which I'm not going to explain the nuances, but if you've been there, you get it. And that really, really made a difference because then it was just two people talking and, like we were kind of like, we were laughing and actually, having a genuine moment in conversation. And, one of the big things, he asked me a few questions. He said, obviously, you've come up to me multiple times. You've come up to the other trainer a bunch of number of times. Like, obviously, you're very committed to this, and asked me a few other questions. I pulled something out of it that I could take away involving details. and about how it would be. I'm not going to go into details about it, but that's effectively what, kind of the thing was. And I was like, okay, you know what? I think I can work with that. Whatever process we end up doing now, I think that I can work with that. Like, that's definitely something I could be working with. So, as we're going forward, we get into, if you've been in the Landmark, and I'm going to be careful about not getting into, 5.5, I'm going to be careful about not getting into spoilers here. If you've been into like that final conversation about what Landmark is actually is all about, there are certain things that are kind of said and declared, and then it's kind of up to the audience to kind of stand up and bring up ideas. And this idea that was thought up and declared, if you had a conversation about like the philosophy of it, there is a tangential topic, an area of conversation that always comes up and is, in my opinion, it's intrinsically related to that, and nobody else had brought it up yet. And I was like, well, wait a minute, nobody else has brought this up. Like, I need to look at this as, trainer hat on. I need to look at this as like a challenge to be able to go up there and say that, even though I know a lot of people probably aren't going to like hearing about it. And so I went up there and I said it, and we started having a little bit of a conversation, and I could feel kind of the tension building from the audience, because it was almost going in a similar way as like last night was. And then suddenly he turns his back on, he basically turns his back on me and has a conversation with the rest of the audience, kind of points out, like, this is why, he's like, yeah, but you're doing the exact same thing. This is why the audience is laughing at you, which is, wonderful to hear in front of 125 people. But at the same time, I'm not getting validation from, like, I get validation from me. I don't need validation from, a room full of people, because one of the things is like, I'm not overly concerned about looking good. Obviously, you've seen some of these videos. Come on. And so then they go into this talking about, 7. He goes into talking about how, everybody is always chasing like the next big thing, right? And that we can't be like content. And for me, I didn't look at it that way. Like, I'm like, hey, you know what? Like, there are always some things that you can be striving towards, but before he went and talked for about 15-20 minutes while I'm just standing up there like, all right, like, I'm not going to sit back down yet, because this hasn't been resolved, and I don't like leaving communication open like that. And so he goes on, he's about to start up his next segment, and I'm like, hey, wait a minute, like, why can't, is it not a choice just to be like happy and content, knowing that you're working towards things? Like, you've built in routines to be working towards something. Like, you go to the gym 3 times a week, but you don't need that like massive change like overnight, because you know that a healthy lifestyle is built over time. And so one of the things that he brought up is like, oh, my body's not supposed to have these extra this extra stuff. My body has like, ugh. And that was, for the people who saw me post yesterday, that was the moment where I was kind of like, like, I look at this and I'm like, yeah, I look at this and I see 190 pounds of like sexy. So, that kind of got like it cut a little bit of the tension in the air. But then as the conversation between he and I continued for a moment, you could just feel it kind of like keep rising. But nonetheless, though, it was being inauthentic if I sat back down, because that's not, if I'm looking at this from my, trainer hat and doing this, then it's a personal challenge, so to speak, for me to speak my mind about what's going on. And so I sat, I spoke a few other things, and then ended up sitting back down. And in that moment, I have never felt more like the villain in a room. It was amazing, because I've never felt it before, and I love things like that. But it was just, it was so interesting. And I had a number of people like walk up to me like afterwards, like, hey, that was really rough. Like, are you okay? And I just kind of like smile and laugh, because I'm like, yeah, of course it is. Like, we have this moment right now, right? We can choose what we want to make out of it. Like, that was an awesome experience that I could probably never have imagined kind of coming up. And so what am I going to be taking away from this? So, the evening wrapped up. We go through its, like what ends up happening at the very, very end, blah, 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 for those of you who have done it. And so this is kind of my, like, summation of it. One, if you're committed to personal development, like, get your ass in there. Like, seriously, because one, you're not really going to have anything to lose. Like, yes, you've got like 3 days and some money. Money will end up coming back, but in those 3 days, one, you're going to meet awesome people, because you always do when you go to these things anyway. You can't help it, because awesome people attend, like, you know, awesome events. You're definitely going to be walking away with, you know, some bits and pieces of communication. If you've been doing the trainer facilitator like route and you've been like actively like going after stuff like really aggressively, you're going to have a slightly different experience, but it's up to you to take stuff out of it. And you need to be able to make the most out of it, and you need to train yourself to make the most out of it, even if you're not really digging the information or whatever. So, you know, those are some of the things that I enjoyed about it. Those are some of the things that, you know, kind of rubbed me the wrong way. I don't know if I would recommend it knowing what I do now, but like honestly, like my previous experiences with Landmark with their intros didn't really have me like 11 minutes. Didn't really have me like gunning to jump into the next one. So that was kind of where I was like going into it as well. So I can't say too much to it, but the bottom line is that if you're committed to personal development, if you're committed to, you know, constantly jumping into new experiences to become the best person that you can be, then guess what? Like, this is another one in a long, you know, line of other seminars to be taking. So I definitely took away some great scripts. I definitely took, well, scripts, not really scripts. And God, I honestly, I don't really know how to, I don't really know how to end this on like a really solid final note, because I think that the solid final note will come in the days and weeks to come as I go back and am communicating with them, because there's an extended like 10 weeks of like one evening a week kind of thing. And I liked a lot of the people who I met, so I want to be like back and engaging with them. And so that's what's going to be happening. And I will definitely be giving updates along this, you know, along the beginning of this journey. Regarding the advanced courses and stuff, like I'm really not interested in them right now. I think that while money comes and goes, and yes, there obviously is money involved, I don't think that my time invested into it, that I would really be getting out of it, as opposed to where I could invest time and money elsewhere into different skill sets and different courses to jump in with that with some other people. So hopefully just under 13 minutes is going to be good enough. We'll see you tomorrow.